Hi, and welcome to More Human, More Resources, the HR podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm Vicki Brown, your host and CEO of Idomeneo Enterprises. As a serial entrepreneur, I understand that having the right expert help has been critical to my success. That's why I'm dedicated to telling you, in plain language, what's going on in the world of HR that might impact your business and what you need to do about it, with real actionable tips to help you master that list of must-dos and grow your leadership muscle. First things first, the information contained in this podcast is provided for general purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Your decision to adopt or not adopt any practice or procedure mentioned in this podcast is solely yours, and we bear no responsibility for the outcome. We urge you to always consult legal counsel and other appropriate licensed professionals. And with that, let's get into the show. You're listening to Season 5, Episode 9. Okay, I'm going to ask that you indulge me for a second. You know what fascinates me about leadership? The science behind it. And when you actually look at what neuroscience tells us about great leaders, well, it's remarkable. It turns out there's a part of our brain called the default mode network, and it's specifically designed for self-reflection. But here's the thing. How many of us actually tap into it? Well, we should, because research shows that leaders who cultivate self-awareness actually have better emotional regulation and make stronger decisions. And I don't know about you, but as I go through the inevitable ups and downs of the day, better emotional regulation sounds like a golden ticket. And get this, when we engage in practices like mindfulness and journaling, we're not just going through the motions. We're physically rewiring our brains to enhance our self-awareness and emotional intelligence. That's powerful stuff. And here's something that might surprise you. Practices like mindfulness and journaling, well, they aren't just feel-good woo-woo exercises that you check off your to-do list. Sure, I know this sounds like another morning routine guru telling you to meditate and journal your way to enlightenment. But there's science here, and it's really interesting. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that these types of practices actually create new neural pathways in your brain. They strengthen the areas responsible for emotional regulation and self-awareness. We're talking about measurable changes in brain structure and function. In fact, MRI studies have shown increased gray matter density in regions linked to learning, memory, and emotional regulation after just 8 weeks of consistent mindfulness practice. That's not woo-woo. That's neuroscience. We're physically rewiring our brains to enhance our self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And that's powerful stuff. Now, I work with a lot of first-time leaders, and I notice that they tend to focus heavily on countless external challenges. They're worried about finances, operations, employee performance. And don't get me wrong, these are important. But what I've learned over 20 years in this field is that the biggest breakthroughs in leadership, well, they come from within. So as you continue on your leadership journey, keep these points in mind. Self-awareness is your leadership superpower. When you really understand your strengths and weaknesses, you can lead with authenticity. And here's what many people don't realize. Your employees, well, they can tell. They know when you're genuine, when you understand yourself, and most importantly, when you're willing to grow. Now, let's talk about something that can derail your leadership journey. Blind spots. Every single leader, every single person has them. They're those habits, biases, or emotional triggers that can negatively impact your decision-making and your team's morale. And when you're not aware of them, that's when things get messy. Maybe you're struggling with delegation because deep down, you don't trust other people to maintain your standards. Or maybe you're micromanaging because you haven't confronted your own fear of failure. These are blind spots, and they don't just affect you. They ripple through your entire team. They can impact trust, communication, and the actual culture of your team. Next up is the mirror test. Your team is essentially a reflection of your leadership, both the good and the bad parts. When I'm working with clients, I often ask them to look at their team dynamics as a mirror. If your team lacks initiative, seems disengaged, or struggles with accountability, it's usually not about them. It's about you. And this is why many leaders need to take a hard look in that mirror. To put an even finer point on it, when your team consistently shows certain behaviors, they're actually giving you valuable feedback about your leadership style. If they're always waiting for your approval, that's not them being indecisive. That's you sending signals that you don't trust their judgment. If they're not bringing new ideas to the table, ask yourself whether you've shot down suggestions one too many times. For instance, if you notice your team members are hesitant to speak up in meetings, ask yourself, have I created an environment where open dialogue is truly welcomed? What happens when someone disagrees with me? Do I actually listen, or do I defend my position? Or if they're constantly waiting for your approval before moving forward, have you inadvertently trained them to be dependent on your input by criticizing their independent decisions? These patterns don't develop overnight. They're the result of hundreds of small interactions where your responses, your body language, and your decisions have taught your team how to behave. Well, the good news? Once you recognize these patterns, you can start to shift them. But it requires real honesty with yourself about how your actions, not your intentions, but your actual behaviors, have shaped your team's responses. There's a powerful exercise that I like to use with my clients. It's called the time capsule. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. What leadership habits do you wish had started today? This isn't just about who you are as a leader right now. It's about actively shaping who you want to become. And here's why this exercise is so powerful. It forces you to think beyond the immediate fires you're putting out right now and focus on the leader you truly want to be. When I guide clients through this exercise, I ask them to be specific. Don't just say, I want to be a better leader. Instead, paint a detailed picture. Maybe future you is known for developing other strong leaders in your organization, the kind of leader who spots potential in people before they see it in themselves. Or perhaps you've built a reputation for creating psychologically safe spaces where creativity is celebrated, where team members know their wild ideas won't be shot down. But here's where most people get stuck. They think these future traits are something they'll develop when they have time or once things settle down. But that's not how it works. If you want to be known as someone who develops others, you need to start having development conversations right now. If you want to create psychological safety, you need to start responding differently to mistakes and new ideas today. Every interaction is a brick in the foundation of your future leadership identity. The key is to start building those habits now, even in small ways. Take that future vision and break it down into daily practices. What would that future leader do in your next team meeting? How would they handle the difficult conversation you need to have tomorrow? This isn't about making dramatic changes overnight. It's about making intentional choices that align with the leader you want to become. Remember, self-awareness isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey. The most effective leaders I know make it a daily practice. They regularly pause for self-reflection. They seek feedback, even when it's uncomfortable. They understand that their personal growth directly impacts their team's success. And here's what I want you to take away from this conversation. Your journey to becoming a more self-aware leader starts with small, intentional steps. Begin by carving out time each day for reflection. Pay attention to your emotional response in challenging situations. Notice the patterns in your team's behavior and be willing to see how they might mirror your own leadership style. Because when you commit to developing self-awareness, you're not just becoming a better leader. You're creating a ripple effect that transforms your entire organization. And that's the kind of impact that truly matters. If you found this information helpful, please leave a review and tell a friend. Thanks for spending the time. Until next week, same time, same place.